Welcome in, Hawks fans. Your boy Bryce Lewis back at it again for another episode of Believe in Hawks. You already know your boy's back, but I brought another guest with me this week, Wes Morton, managing editor for Peachtree Hoops. If you've been familiar with the Hawks coverage scene, Peachtree Hoops has been around for a while. And, Wes, I appreciate you coming on, man, and sharing some of your wisdom with me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, it seems like it's gonna be a busy off season, so lots to talk about. So great
Yeah,
timing.
definitely, man. And I feel like, this is, I don't want to say this one of the more active off seasons we've had. It's just more active because of the draft now being a high priority. But we already knew coming into it, even before that, it was going to be a busy off season. So let's go ahead and dive into it right now. We're going to start with the draft. Obviously, in a few weeks, the Hawks will be able to make that first pick on ABC primetime. We will, unless they get another pick, they'll be done. And so we'll be able to just first pick. All right, we know what we got to do. We know what we have.
Yeah,
So the big debate has been Alex Sarr, Ricochet, and even Klingon has been mentioned in that as potential candidates for that first pick. I feel like it's been kind of a rotation a little bit. First, when we got the pick, oh yeah, Sarr. Then Ricochet gained momentum, and now Klingon has been the latest one to gain momentum. What are your overall thoughts right now as we stand on that first pick of where the Hawks should go? And then also just give your thoughts on the people that are being considered in those three.
yeah, man. Yeah, they got their options for sure. Like you say, it's kind of every rumor report. People from ESPN or wherever you basically mentioned those three names, Sorry, Ricochet and Klingon, and they're all like a little bit different in their own right. Obviously like positionally and kind of like where they would fit in and kind of what their age is. So it's definitely part of it is like it kind of ties into everything going on with the organization with they're going to probably have to make some moves in free agency. So making this pick is going to kind of go along that way to saying like, okay, we're kind of going this direction versus this direction. Um, you know, two of them are basically big men types,
Mm.
and then Ricochet is 3 and D. They think maybe if he puts on a little bit of weight, he can maybe play the four a little bit, but he's going to shoot and defend and all that. So you know if they don't trade out of the spot, which is kind of the other thing that's kind of been
Mm.
popping up pretty recently, they may try to trade down a few spots because I think they can get one of them maybe a little bit lower. But if they stay at one, it seems like it's going to be one of those three guys, and one of those three guys is going to give the Hawks some size, something that they need at basically every position, but especially the forward spots and the five man. So I can kind of get into each individual guy. I think like you said when we started, it was basically just Alex Sarr. Like
Mm.
just when you look at his tape, um, his upside, like when you look at all the things he can do on the basketball court, is like pretty crazy. Like he's 7'1", he moves, he legit moves like a wing. He can handle the ball in the open court. Kind of reminds you of Jalen Johnson when he's
Mm.
shown that over the past season. Little flashes of Giannis. Not saying he's Giannis, but in terms of being able to actually handle the ball as a big man, got a little bit of passing as well. A little bit of shooting, but then the defense is really what's like. Defense is what everyone raves about. The fact that he's got like super huge wingspan. He can defend. You know, just kind of sideline to sideline kind of a guy. He's super mobile, super agile. Can defend at the rim and block shots and stuff. So question with him is he's really young. He just turned 19.
Mm.
He was in Australia this past year, and he really didn't play a lot. I mean that kind of happens like when guys go to like Europe or Australia. Like those teams are professionals. Like they're trying to win. They're not really trying to develop the guy. So he kind of had a role where he was coming off the bench, and he would do some things, but he would never really get more than like 20 minutes a game. So it was kind of hard for him to like get into a rhythm and that sort of thing. So it's kind of like you saw flashes, you saw him being developed, but he's still an unfinished product.
Mm.
Um, so that's kind of the guy I've kind of leaned towards this whole process. The flashes he's shown. As far as the other guys, um, Klingon, I've actually been a pretty big fan of him. Like even well before like the college season kind of finished. He was a little bit on the radar after last season. He was UConn's backup. Sanogo, their starter, went to the NBA, so he kind of moved into that starting center role. He was hurt, but obviously second half of the college basketball season, he was pretty dominant. UConn went, they were basically like, just a dominant team all year. Went through the tournament, like not many people challenged him, and he was just just that classic 5-man
Mhm.
rim protector. You kind of see that in Rudy Gobert, the guy he's compared to, or going back a little bit of Marc Gasol is another good comparison. Definitely a guy that's is big. He's not as mobile as Sar, but um, these playoffs, like the NBA playoffs, have kind of shown us like those classic big mans are still like they can still do a lot of stuff. When you look at Gobert and what Derek Lively's doing for Dallas, those classic drop bigs are still they still have a big effect. And if he can just go up and you know on offense, his role's not going to be super huge. He'll just grab lobs, stuff like that. I don't think he's ever going to be that much of a shooter. Whereas I think Sar could become a shooter in a few years. So those are kind of differences there. But the fact that Klingon's been productive and he's actually shown it in a college level, just something like Sar hasn't quite done, just because he went a different route. There's some appeal there because you kind of know a guy who kind of dominated college at that age. I think he's 20 right now. Like he should be pretty productive immediately at the NBA. And the third guy, Reece Sachet, honestly, I didn't know too much about him until recently. He's a name that kind of crept up on a lot of people, but I'd
Mhm.
heard him kicked around. But he's playing in France, 6'10", kind of wing guy. Good defender, good team defender, all around defender, good shooter, really good shooter. They think he could be a really really high upside kind of shooter. The questions if you can't really put the ball in his hands, tell him to create. It's not really his game. So he's going to do a lot of his work off the ball, which, if you're building around Trey Young, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you kind of take the ball, you know, Trey Young can kind of set him up, get into the paint, and he'll have, that shooting space for him. But, he's been productive really down the stretch. The French league they play longer than,
Mhm.
any other league, essentially like the Euro leagues, the French league. So he just a couple weeks ago ended his season. So, scouts have been able to kind of look and see him. There's a picture around on Twitter with, with Quinn Snyder and Landry
Mhm.
Fields and Kyle
Yep.
Korver. They went and go watch them like a week after the draft lottery. So he's a definite possibility for me. I'm not that enthusiastic about putting a number one pick on a guy who can't create at this stage. Like maybe
Mhm.
he gets a little bit of creation later on in his career, but he's pretty much just gonna be an off ball kind of 3-and-D guy. Should be a good shooter, good defender. He's got like a 6'10" wingspan as well. But um, he'd be a guy if you traded down and maybe you could pick him up 3, 4, 5 in the draft, maybe somewhere you look. But for me, I think if the Hawks stay at 1, I'm still in on Sar. Um, even knowing that it's the upside's there. It's going to probably take a few years, but I think his ability is just rare in this draft, and I think he kind of puts himself apart from each other in kind of a tier of his own.
Yeah, and I think too, with Sar, it's funny. We've heard that word unicorn thrown around a few times, which I mean, that's viewed as like, oh, you have a chance to potentially be a special player with the skill set that he possesses. Because I mentioned on Twitter a couple of days ago about just my only issue with Clinton is just I'm worried because you have seen it also in this playoffs where the guys are going to attack your weaknesses. You have Clinton on the floor, Brunson saying, "Give him to me because I know he can't guard me," and that may make him unplayable in certain situations. Um, that's kind of what Dallas at times did to Rudy Gobert. So but it's a fine line because, like you said, everybody has a role and it can work. It just depends on matchups and who you're playing and things of that nature. And then Rishache, like I said, I just feel like drafting him just to potentially trade DeAndre Hunter. I'm just kind of like, well, are we really making a upgrade of significant proportion there that's really changing anything? Where I feel like Sar has the potential to actually kind of change some things for this team. If obviously depending on playing time and where he is, obviously he's still developing as well. So it'll be interesting to kind of see, like I said, how they view that when that decision comes. But when talking about the roster as a whole, people have obviously connected. People wonder about Trey Young's status with the team. It feels like those trade rumors have died down a little bit. I've seen some reports there saying, yeah, Hawks still value Trey. That's probably unlikely. Big guy really is just DeJounte still. That's going to be the big question mark for a lot of people. Is DeJounte going to be moved? So I just wanted to get your thoughts on DeJounte's situation. Just are you feeling that that's the case? I've said that I wouldn't be shocked if they kept him, but I think there's definitely gonna be conversations like they were at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably go the other way. I'd be pretty shocked. I would be shocked if they kept him, honestly.
Mm,
Like, I suppose it's a possibility, but I think it's been pretty clear. Like, last 2 seasons just haven't gone how they had hoped it had gone. Like, I think everybody would admit that. Dejounte's extension kicks in this year, and it just seems like for whatever reason when they're on the court together, it just doesn't. Two guys that good should be better than they are. At least the team should be
mm,
better than they are, and they're just not really. They seem to kind of play better even when Trey went down this past season in March. Like the team actually kind of played pretty well. I don't. That doesn't mean that Trey Young's a bad player, but it just felt like the lineups were a little bit more balanced.
mm,
You had Dejounte, you had Bogey, you had Veet really playing well. And then the opposite was kind of true when it was just Trey, Bogey, DeAndre Hunter or something. Those lineups seem to do a lot better. So um, for me, I think the fit is just not there. I think it's pretty clear at this point. So I think they would again. Trey Young's essentially the franchise guy. Like he's been there
mm.
since 2018. The franchise built the whole thing around him. He's the guy. I think they would want to keep him. Dejounte obviously was brought in later, um, and there's kind of rumors that he's not particularly happy with his role and things of that nature. So I think it would be best if, yeah, I mean, if they try to move him, like I said, he's got a 4-year deal now kicking in. There are a lot of rumors. I think the biggest ones I heard were him with the Pelicans.
Mm.
You see a lot of versions of like him for Brandon Ingram or something in that area, or maybe they're trying to target Herb Jones. The Pelicans are kind of in the same position where they just feel like Brandon Ingram and Zion don't really fit together with CJ in the mix. So those are two teams. Both the Hawks and the Pelicans are trying to shake things up anyway. I think those could be good. That could be a good location for Dejounte. He can go there. He can be pretty much like a better point guard than CJ can be for them, and the Hawks can maybe get back some wing players with a little bit more size and things. So that's where I've basically been all along. I think they're going to
Mm.
hold on to Trey. I think they're trying to build around him. Um, Move Dejounte. And then a guy like Trey, you need a guy like Trey. If you're going to draft a big man, if they draft Sar or Klingman, you really got to have a point guard. Um, so I think as good a point guard as you can get. Trey's obviously like a great lob thrower, get them involved. Um, so I think he'll be able to kind of bring them along as well. But yeah, that's uh, I suppose it's possible they could maybe hold on to them and maybe try again. Maybe one more season with Trey and DeJounte. But me personally, I think we've kind of seen all there is to see of this, and I think it's best if they kind of moved on and then try to really retool the roster around Trey, try to give him more size, try to improve the defense.
Yeah, and I think that's very understandable. I mean, like I said, the rumors are going to be there. You said the Pelicans would be the most obvious connection, which has been the most obvious. I've seen a lot of people, even the Pelican side of things, talking about that, trying to figure out which guard they would rather prefer. And then we've heard even maybe San Antonio has been mentioned, obviously, as a potential destination as well. And then obviously we know guys like Clint Capella and DeAndre Hunter are also going to be available. I've made this suggestion, with Oklahoma City having a surplus of picks, they're looking to move off some of them. You probably could pick up a couple of first from OKC just because they have so many. They can and they need a center. They need a guy like Capella on their roster and things like that. And the biggest thing I think obviously be DeAndre Hunter because people don't really know where the best fit is, I guess, for him. And then we don't know what a trade would look like if that was the case, or would he just be a part of a package? So do you see the likelihood of them both being gone after this offseason, or is it more maybe one out of the two?
I'm honestly leaning at one out of two, and I would probably lean Clint Capella. Like,
Mm,
one thing I will say about DeAndre Hunter, like when he came back from injury, he came off the bench. He was a 6-man role, and
mm,
honestly, he was probably playing his best basketball of his career at that point. I think, shooting it really well and kind of a little bit more aggressive getting to the basket. So I could see them holding on to DeAndre. I think they could probably keep him in that 6-man role. Um, that might be best for him. Capella, on the other hand, he's a lot older. I think he just turned 30. He's got 1 year on his contract. Um, I think it's time for the Hawks to kind of get younger at that center position.
Mm,
Capella's dealt with some injuries over the last few years, and he was playing well down the stretch of the season. Once he got healthy, once he was kind of back to being like obviously being Clint Capella and rebounding and blocking shots and things. But I think, especially with them having the number one overall pick, um, in my mind, that there's a good chance they go with a big man. And you still got Okongwu. Okongwu's, just his extension's kicking in this year. Um, I think it makes the most sense to just, like you say, trade Clint. This would be, pretty decent opportunity, like you say, with OKC. They could just grab him because they needed a big man. Obviously, kind of their last, you know, for their last playoffs run. They may want him going forward,
mm,
push Chet to the floor. I think you see other teams honestly try to go maybe like a Memphis Grizzlies, try to put him next to Jaren Jackson. That's
mm,
another one I've seen rumored. But yeah, I do think Clint will have like a decent amount of trade interests. Memphis may be like a future first or something like that. They don't have the picks that OKC has, but the fact that he's a veteran, expiring big man who can, he's still pretty good. Like I said, he's pretty good. Obviously, the Hawks fans have had his frustrations with like, he doesn't finish at the rim as
mm.
much as he used to, but he's still good. He still helps your defense. He still helps your rebounding. So I think he's pretty likely to get moved. And DeAndre Hunter, I would say there's possibility, but I would say that there's a lot less possibility just because he was really starting to play well towards the end of the season, and I think they may keep him for another season to like I said, come off the bench and maybe just solidify that bench unit.
Yeah, and I mean that's obviously a role that I think we all saw him excel in, and hopefully that is something they consider. But I also understand, you know, you got to make sure you have someone who can fill in for that spot too. Which brings me to this next topic that has been brought up over the weekend. So Jalen Johnson obviously is a guy who versatile player, has different skills, has some guard skills. Hawks team as a four and everything. There was a debate on Twitter that hey, Jalen Johnson could play the two guard spot.
Right, right.
Right. And so I've gave my 2 cents. I was like, Jalen Johnson is a four. He is a forward. That's how the team sees him. That's what he's going to be. And moving forward. What do you think about that whole conversation? I mean, I guess I can understand their concept. Oh, wait, he has guard skills. All he has to do is be able to shoot and it'll work, right? But I don't know. What do you think about Jalen Johnson at the two?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. Like he's a forward. So and again, that's all the Hawks have. The Hawks have always seen him as a forward. Like even when he wasn't really playing, he went to the G League. They're only playing him at the four, and they play him a little bit at the five actually in the G League.
Mm,
So and we've actually seen him actually play the five a little bit. When they got injured, I think there was a couple games where Clint and Congo were out, so Jalen played the five. But yeah, I mean they see him as a five. Yeah, he definitely has guard skills. He can handle the ball and all that. But yeah, the responses I got on Twitter were, well, it's like it's less about positions and more about putting tall size around Trey and all this force and speed stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but positions still do matter.
yeah.
Like a two guard is still a two guard. Like you're not playing bogey at the four. Bogey's a two who could play three. So positions do matter. Jalen, he can handle the ball and things in open court, but he plays a lot more like a Pascal Siakam, who's pretty clearly a four. The Raptors were kind of playing him at the one for a little bit, and it just wasn't working. It's pretty obvious it
Mm,
wasn't working. You know, Traded him to Indiana. He slotted in as their four, and now it's working. That Halliburton Siakam kind of partnership's working. I see a similar thing with Trey and Jalen Johnson. Are like, yeah, Jalen can handle the ball, but he's also going to set screens and roll to the rim. He's going to finish at the rim. He rebounds. Like he does a lot of big man stuff while also having guard skills. And he shot the ball better certainly, but he's not. Most two guards are shooting. A lot of threes. They're shooting 35 to 38% from three. He's not quite as consistent a shooter. Like he's more of a guy who wants to drive. So yeah, he's a forward. Like I said, we're into this talk where it's like positionless basketball,
mhm,
and that's somewhat true. And guys can move around. I could even see Jalen playing the three a little bit,
Mm.
He's played the 5 already a little bit, but, when you start talking like he's a 2, like, positions do matter, like, the 2 guard has to be able to, like, you know, be like, the secondary ball handler and the shooter, and the Hawks don't really see Jalen that way. They want him to do, like, big man stuff and finish near
Mm.
the rim, so, and honestly, like, I think that's a big deal, like, everyone's looking for those versatile fours, like, you don't wanna take away that versatility he has for his position, just because he could maybe make it work as a 2, like, you wanna
Mm.
put him in the best position for him to succeed, and that's as him, being that 4 role.
Yeah, and like I said, I agree. Yeah, 4 role. Let him excel from that position. Let him continue to grow. He still is growing. He's doing still developing as a player as he continues on his career. God, they look as a big part of the squad moving forward, and as some people believe, star potential as well. So let him. Because also moving him around, it's just like now he has to kind of learn the intricacies of that spot and what you need from this at him from the 3, then him at the 4, even him at the 5. So you don't want to add that to the development of Jalen when you're trying to make that happen. But speaking of that and the young guys in general, is there a young player out of the draft class from last year, just already on the roster right now, that you see going into next season? Obviously, we have to see how the roster formulates, but you could see going into next season as like he's going to play a bigger role. He's going to take another step in your eyes.
Yeah, for me, that's Kobe Buffkin. I like what I saw. Like, unfortunately, he was hurt for most of the first season. He went to the G League for a little bit, got hurt. Um, you know, kind of he got better, started really taking off with the G League. He had like a 41-point game, I believe, in one game with the
Mm,
Skyhawks, and ended up kind of playing some time with the Hawks, and basically from first game, and you could tell like his guard defense is something that they haven't really had. Like, reminded me a lot of like DeLon Wright when he was here.
mm,
He was really like, um, playing good guard defense on the ball, causing turnovers. He can handle the ball a little bit. He's still kind of working on that. Um, but handle the ball enough to be like this kind of combo guard role. Shooting and stuff has come along. But I think the fact that he just plays with like he's given 100% effort, 100% hustle. Making things happen on the defensive end. That's something the Hawks haven't really had. A guard really. Occasionally Dejounte will give us flashes where he's creating steals and stuff, but Kobe can really be that like third guard, create a lot of turnovers and handle the ball as well. So that's pretty valuable, especially next to Trey Young. You can kind of hide his defense a little bit when you have like guy like Kobe. So I definitely see him. I think there's a possibility he's even the backup point guard
mm.
for next season. Backup point, he'll play some too. But I can see him having kind of like a maybe not quite Jalen Johnson breakout, but a little bit of breakout season in his second year.
Yeah, and that would be really exciting for Hawks fans to see Kobe take that next step. I mean, that's one of the reasons why you could also add that to why maybe moving on from DeJounte would be best is for the Kobe's development because
Right.
DeJounte is the facto backup PG, and obviously when he was healthy, they didn't really play Kobe when they were both out there, Trey and DeJounte. So that could just be big for Kobe and to improve the defense in the backcourt altogether. And depending on who they put at that 2 spot, now you could maybe put another 2-way guy there. Now you've defensively added, but you can say you've upgraded if you roll back to a 4-guard rotation with 2 guys who can defend, and you can get away with Trey as long as he continues to put an effort defensively, and Bogut who tries to do something. Um, I'm gonna ask you one last one. I'm gonna let you go. We gotta talk about the NBA Finals right now. Celtics are up 2-0 on Dallas before shifting to Dallas. Is this series over, Wes? Is it done? Is Boston taking this, or Mavericks
Um,
gonna fight back and we gonna maybe go back to Boston 2-2?
so I don't ever like to say it's done, but I would definitely lean towards me personally. I would lean towards probably being 1-1 in Dallas. Boston gets a split, and then they probably take it in Game 5. Honestly, I think Boston's just playing too well.
Mm,
Obviously with Porzingis coming back is like the perfect timing for them because I think they would have really struggled to a degree against the Mavericks without Porzingis, but he really like he was big for them in both games, really, but especially Game 1. They just it's just a matchup problem for them. Like they just have no one
mm,
who can guard. He was just rising up and firing over smaller guys, and the fact that Boston can just space their floor with all 5 guys, space the floor, drive. Even when their offense wasn't really clicking a lot in Game 2, they also have just like the perimeter defenders that just they're making it tough for Kyrie and all that. So it's really just both sides of the ball. I just think they're pretty dominant this stage, and they're locked in. They've got experience. Like Kyrie's basically the only one on that Mavs team who's been here before, whereas the majority of the Boston team, they were in the finals 2 years ago. Drew Holiday's been a champion with the Bucks, so they've got that experience. So I think Mavericks will probably get one. They'll probably get one either game 3 or game 4, just to kind of I don't think they get swept, but I would say it's probably going to end in 5, just the way it looks.
Yes, sir. The gentleman's sweep. Okay, 5 game. Hey, listen, I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't want to give Dallas. I want to count them out because they have been a team that can make adjustments. I know sometimes even after they lost 2 first game ones in the first 2 series they played, people are like, oh, maybe and then they made adjustments and they were adjust. So maybe that could happen. But right now, it looks like Boston is the better team in this series, and so if that's the case, then good for them if that ends up happening. And obviously, everybody's going to next year. The East runs through Boston, so that will be what the Hawks know they're aiming for. But I appreciate you, Wes, for coming on, man, to the show, man. Let people know where they can find you in your work.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you having me again. So you can find me, at peachtreehoops.com. We've been doing draft coverage. We're doing all sorts of stuff. We've been trying to cover the Atlanta Dream as well. So, join us there. Join us through, draft day and through the free agency and stuff like that. You can also follow me on Twitter at bloghawk, BLOGHAWK. I'll be tweeting my opinions and things of that nature. So yeah.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you. Like I said, man, you already know. Follow me on Twitter, Bryce_2K. If you're listening to audio, don't forget to leave a rating and review. YouTube, subscribe and like the video, share it, let people know this is #1 Hawks podcast in the community. But appreciate you, Wes. Like I said, I'm Bryce. That's Wes. We'll see you next time.